For weeks, this whole thing rested on one phone call nobody outside the investigation had actually heard. This week, that call came out, and what people are hearing in it, or what people think they're hearing, has this case more divided than it's been since day one. I'm not going to tell you what's on it. You're going to hear it yourself and decide. But that call is only one of three things that surfaced this week, and honestly, it's the two quieter ones that might matter more. We're taking all of it in order. Don't skip ahead. If you are staying with us, take a second right now and hit subscribe so you don't miss where this goes next. And while you are here, tell us on the comment where in the world you are watching from. It matters to us to know how far this story have reached, and we read every single one. Before we get into it, same rules as always. This case is active. No official cause of death has been confirmed. Everything I'm laying out comes from official records, released audio, and public statements. And this week especially, where people disagree about what they're hearing, I'm going to tell you they disagree. And I'm going to let you be the judge. I'm not here to hand you a verdict. If you're new here, here's the whole thing in 4 sentences. 18-year-old Nolan Wells went out to Horn Island with his friends for the 4th of July. When his friends left, Nolan stayed behind, and 2 days later, he was found in the water. The public was told it looked like an accident within the hour. His family never accepted that, and the independent autopsy came back undetermined. That's where we left off. Now here's what changed. Let me set the stage for you, because the story of this audio is almost as important as the audio itself. When Nolan's friends left that island, their boats started taking on water. The driver called a tow company, Sea Tow, to come help. That call has existed since day one, but the public only ever got pieces of it. First, a short version surfaced, originally obtained by TMZ. That one only really caught the driver talking to the operator. Clean, contained, nothing most people would flag. Then, late one Saturday night, a local outlet, WLOX, released a completely unedited version. The full thing, provided by the Mississippi Department of Marine Resources. And that is when this case caught fire all over again. Because in the unedited version, there's more than just the driver and the operator. There's everything happening around the call, the background, the voices, the chaos of whatever was going on aboard that boat, while one person tried to calmly explain to a stranger that they were sinking.
CETO Assistance, Vicky speaking. How can I help you? All right, of course. How far is the water coming up, sir?
No, we do not need that.
All right.
No, we do not need that.
Now here's where I have to be straight with you, and I need you to really hear me on this. That background audio is hard to make out, genuinely hard, and what people say they hear in it is not agreed on, not even close. Some people listen to the very top of that call, under the hold music before the driver even connects, and they say they hear a young woman say a name, Nolan, followed by, "Oh my God." Some people say that later a male voice yells at somebody to wake up. Some go further and say they hear someone say, "Check his chest." And for a lot of folks, hearing that was the moment everything they'd suspected about this case snapped into focus. To them, this was confirmation that Nolan was on that boat when it left the island, and that something had already happened to him. Let me tell you something. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that's what's on that tape, because I can't, and neither can anybody else with total certainty. The audio doesn't allow it. Here's the other side, and it deserves the same airtime. There are people, including reporters who've talked to folks in Ocean Springs, who say that background isn't what it sounds like at all. that it's exactly what you'd expect from a group of scared young people on a boat that's filling with water. Everybody talking at once, everybody trying to figure out what to do. Do they get off? Do they wait? Panic sounds like a lot of things, and almost none of them sound calm, and they raise a point that's genuinely hard to argue with. If Warren and the others have said all along that Nolan stayed behind on the island after 4:30, and this call happens after the boat already left, then how could those voices be about Nolan? He wouldn't have been on the boat to talk about. By that logic, people aren't hearing a confession. They're hearing what they walked in already expecting to hear. So which is it? I said it at the top, and I meant it. I'm not telling you. You just heard it. Sit with it. Because two people can play that exact same recording, back to back, and walk away with two completely different stories about how an 18-year-old died. That's not me being cute. That's the actual state of this evidence right now. Now here's one of those quieter pieces I promised you. And this one? A lot of people scrolled right past it, because there wasn't just one phone call that day. There were two. The first one we covered, the driver calling Cito for help. But then, a little later, the tow company's captain gets contacted again. And this time, the message is the opposite: stand down. The tow is no longer needed, and that message didn't come from the boy driving the boat. According to what was released, it came from the grandfather, Wyatt Pyron, connected to the boat itself. He reached out and, in essence, called off the rescue, told them everything was handled. They didn't need help anymore. Now, there are two ways to hear that, and I'm going to give you both, same as always. One way. That's just an older man handling a situation for his grandson. The kids panicked, then figured it out, and Grandpa made a quick call to cancel a service they no longer needed and didn't want to pay for. Happens every day, nothing to it. The other way, and this is what a lot of people online are alleging, so I'm telling you plainly that it's an allegation and not a confirmed fact, is that calling off outside help meant fewer strangers showing up, fewer eyes, fewer witnesses to whatever was happening on that boat. I want to be crystal clear here. Nobody has proven that second version. No charges have been filed. No official finding says any of that happened. What I'm giving you is the fact: a call was made to cancel the tow, and it came from the grandfather. And then I'm giving you the two ways people are reading that fact. You do with it what you want. That's your job, not mine. But there's something in that first call that isn't up for interpretation at all. Something the driver said, clear as day, directly to the operator. She asked how many adults were on board, and the answer, word for word, was that there were 0 adults on board. When she pressed, asking if there was really nobody on the boat, the answer came back. Nobody there was over the age of 21. Now stop and think about what that actually tells you. In Mississippi, 21 is the legal drinking age. So you got the person driving that boat telling a dispatcher on a recorded line that not one single person aboard was old enough to legally drink. Hold on to that, because the next thing that came out this week puts that detail in a whole new light. We're going to get to a document, an official one, and it's got one word written on it about Nolan, and that afternoon that changes how all of this reads. That's where we pick it up in part 2. Don't go anywhere. So while half the internet was locked in a war over what they could or couldn't hear on that call, something else came out, something quieter. And unlike the audio, this one you don't have to strain to make out. It's a document, an official record obtained by ABC News through a public records request. When Nolan went missing, the Mississippi Department of Marine Resources was one of the first agencies to respond. And early on, they put together a brief rundown of what they knew about him. Basic stuff. A description to work with: 6'1", 180 pounds, wearing shorts. That's it. Just shorts. And then there's the line that stopped people cold. In the space for what he'd eaten that day, the document says unknown. But in the space describing his alcohol intake, there's a single word: heavy. Not some, not a few drinks. Heavy. Now put that word next to what we ended on last time. The driver of that boat told a dispatcher on a recorded line that nobody aboard was over 21, and now an official first response document is describing an 18-year-old's drinking that day as heavy. Let me tell you something. That paints a very particular picture of that afternoon. A group of young people, none of them old enough to legally drink, out on the water on a holiday, drinking, and by this record, at least one of them heavily. And that raises a question this case hadn't fully faced yet. Where does an 18-year-old and a boat full of people his age get that much alcohol? Somebody supplied it, somebody older, because the people on that boat, by the driver's own words, couldn't buy it themselves. I'm not naming anybody. Nobody's been charged with anything. But that's a real question sitting in the middle of a real record now, and it's not going anywhere. Then came the piece I think actually matters most out of everything this week. And I know that's a big thing to say when there's audio out there people are calling a confession, but hear me out. Because those same documents ABC News got their hands on didn't just describe Nolan. They laid out that entire day on the water, down to the minute. So let me walk you through it. Clean, no drama, just the numbers. That boat left for Horn Island just before 10 in the morning. Nolan and his friends got there at 11:14, and then nothing. For the next 5 hours, that boat sat still, stationary, right there at the island. That part actually lines up with everything we already knew. A huge crowd, thousands of people, a whole day of music and food and folks catching up. 5 hours of ordinary. Then, at 4:31 in the afternoon, the boat leaves. Moving slow, no more than 4 knots, which tracks because remember, they were taking on water. You don't speed in a sinking boat. And here's the number that closes the loop. Whatever problem those teens were reporting, it was resolved about an hour later. At 5:25, the records show that boat back to normal operation, accelerating 35 knots. Full speed. Fine. So sit with what that timeline actually gives you. It confirms the boat had a real problem. You can see it in the speed, crawling at 4 knots. It confirms the problem got fixed. You can see that too, in the jump back up to 35. It confirms exactly when they arrived, exactly how long they stayed, exactly when they left. What it can't tell you, what no timeline can tell you, is what happened to Nolan in the gap. The friend's account is that they didn't abandon him. According to what Marine Resources reported, they said Nolan was with an unknown young woman and that he chose to stay behind on the island rather than leave with the group. And that account is the exact thing the audio argument runs straight into. Because if Nolan stayed on that island after 4:30, then he wasn't on the boat when that call was made, and the voices people swear they hear can't be about him, unless he was. And that right there, that's the whole case. That's the fork the entire thing hangs on. Was Nolan Wells on that island, or was he on that boat? Everything. The audio, the timeline, the friend's story. Every bit of it comes down to that one question, and nobody has closed it. Make it make sense. I wish I could. Nobody can yet. Now, through all of this, the audio, the documents, the public losing its mind trying to solve this in real time, the person who actually holds this case had stayed mostly quiet. The district attorney, Angel Myers McElrath. This week, she spoke, on camera, and she addressed the thing everybody's been frustrated about, the silence, the slow pace, the feeling that nothing's happening. I'm going to keep this short because the law moves slow and I don't want to lose you in it. But her message came down to a few things, and I'll give you two of her actual words. She said plainly that she understands the public's urgency to know what happened to Nolan. But she also said this, and I'm quoting her directly. "We are not taking time for time's sake. We are taking the time required to complete the work this investigation demands." Her explanation for the silence was about rules. In Mississippi, she said, "The rules of professional conduct restrict what a prosecutor can put out during an active investigation." And her point was that holding information back isn't about hiding the truth. It's about protecting the case so it doesn't fall apart later. Anything she says publicly, she argued, could taint a witness or compromise the fairness of the whole thing. And she said something I think a lot of people needed to hear, even if it didn't fully satisfy them. When the public asks, "Did they look at this? Did they think about that?" Her answer was yes. Those are the same questions the investigators are asking. She just can't talk about what the answers are while it's all still open. The case, she confirmed, is heading to a grand jury once the work is done. Now here's the honest tension in that, and I'm not going to pretend it away. Everything she said is reasonable. It's how the system is supposed to work. Patience protects the case. But this is a family, and a community that got told it looked like an accident within an hour of Nolan being found. So when the same system that moved that fast to offer a conclusion now asks them to slow down and trust the process, you can understand why some folks hear that and feel a certain way. Fast, when it was an accident. Slow, now that it's a question. I'm not telling you that's fair or unfair. I'm telling you that's how it lands for a lot of people watching. And both of those things, her reasoning and their frustration, can be true at the exact same time. There's one more thing that came out this week, something the family did that tells you exactly where their heads are at right now. It's quiet, it's legal, and it's aimed directly at the people who were on that boat. That's where we close this out, in part 3, along with why the date this audio dropped carries a weight in Mississippi that goes back generations. Don't skip the last one. So while the DA is asking everybody to be patient and let the process work, Nolan's mother made a move of her own. And it tells you everything about where this family stands right now. On the day they laid her son to rest, the day of the funeral, a source tells ABC News that Christine sent his friends a legal notice. Let that land for a second. She's burying her child. And in the middle of that, she's putting the young men who were on that island on formal notice to expect a lawsuit. But it's what the notice told them to do that matters most. It instructed them to preserve evidence, to not delete anything on their phones. Think about why a grieving mother does that. You only tell somebody to preserve their phone when you believe there's something on it worth preserving. You only say, don't delete anything when you're worried something might disappear. That's not a woman waiting on the system anymore. That's a woman moving to lock down evidence herself before it can vanish. Because after weeks of this, she doesn't trust that it won't. And remember, this lines up with everything the family's been fighting for since day one. The phone Nolan didn't have with him. The accounts that don't match. The story they never believed. Now, it's in writing. Aimed straight at the people who were there. The family hasn't said anything more publicly about those lawsuits. They don't have to. The notice said it for them. Here's where we actually stand tonight, when you strip away the noise. The audio is out, and people can't agree on what's in it. The timeline is confirmed, and it still can't tell us whether Nolan was on that island or that boat. A document put the word heavy next to his name. A grandfather called off a rescue, and a mother is telling her son's friends to preserve their phones. Not one of those things closes this case. Every single one of them makes it heavier. And here's the part I can't skip, because it's why this case hits the way it does. The unedited call came out around July 25th, In Mississippi, that date carries weight because it's the birthday of Emmett Till, a black teenager whose death generations ago became one of the most painful chapters in this country's history. 85 years later, a lot of people looked at the timing and felt something they couldn't shake. I'm not going to tell you what to make of that, but I understand why, for a whole lot of people watching this, Nolan Wells stopped being just one case a long time ago. The mistrust so many folks brought to this story didn't come from nowhere. It came from history, and every unanswered question in this case sits right on top of it. So the question we've asked since the very beginning still hasn't moved. What happened to Nolan Wells on that island? We know more than we did last week. We can hear more. We can see more. We've got numbers and documents and a call that everybody's arguing over. But the one thing that actually matters, the truth of that boy's final hours, is still sitting behind a wall the public hasn't been let past. The grand jury is coming. The state's own autopsy with the toxicology is still pending. And until those land, this stays exactly what it's been from the start. Undetermined. Not because nobody's looking, because there's still too much they won't or can't tell us yet. We're staying on this one. All the way. The moment that state autopsy drops, the moment toxicology comes back, the moment the grand jury moves, we'll be right back here with it, laid out straight, contested where it's contested, confirmed only where it's confirmed. No jumping ahead of the evidence. That's the promise. If you'd rather get it that way, honest, careful, and without somebody telling you what to think, subscribe so you're here when the next piece lands. And before you go, I want to hear from you. You heard the same audio everybody else did, so tell me straight. What did you hear? And which piece from this week moved the needle for you the most? The call, the timeline, that one word on that document, or a mother telling her son's friends to hold onto their phones? Drop it below. We read every single one, and your comments genuinely shape where we take this next. This is Beyond Dark Cases, where we stay with the forgotten and the recent, the disappearances and the unanswered long after everybody else has moved on. Until the next confirmed update, take care of yourselves, and we'll see you back here.